My jealous sister-in-law locked me in a closet at my baby shower, so her mother stripped her of everything in a way that left her speechless and broken. I used to believe that family gatherings were supposed to be about love and celebration, until one baby shower nearly cost me my life and my unborn child. The very people I trusted to protect me became witnesses to something so twisted that it still gives me chills thinking about it. My name is Charlotte Reynolds, and I'm 30 years old. I work as a school counselor, helping kids navigate their emotional challenges, which is ironic considering I almost didn't survive the emotional warfare within my own family. At the time this happened, I was 7 months pregnant with my first child, glowing with that pregnancy radiance everyone talks about, excited about finally becoming a mother after years of trying. The baby shower was supposed to be the highlight of my pregnancy journey. My mother-in-law Margaret had insisted on hosting it at the family estate, a beautiful Victorian house that had been in the Reynolds family for generations. Margaret was a formidable woman in her late 50s, a retired high school principal who commanded respect wherever she went. She had salt and pepper hair always pulled back in a perfect bun, piercing blue eyes that could see right through any nonsense, and a way of speaking that made everyone listen. Despite her stern exterior, she had always treated me fairly, which was more than I could say for some other family members. The problematic family member in question was my sister-in-law Tiffany, my husband David's younger sister. At 28, Tiffany was everything I wasn't. Glamorous, attention-seeking, and absolutely obsessed with being the center of everyone's universe. She made her living as a fashion influencer, constantly posting perfectly curated photos of her designer outfits and luxury lifestyle on social media. Her blonde hair was always perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she had this way of making every conversation somehow circle back to her. From the moment David and I got married 3 years earlier, Tiffany had made it clear that she resented sharing her family's attention with me. When we announced our pregnancy, her congratulations felt forced, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. I'd catch her rolling her eyes when people asked about the baby, or making subtle comments about how some people just love being the center of attention. But I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just typical sibling jealousy that would fade with time. I should have trusted my instincts. The morning of the baby shower, I arrived at Margaret's house early to help with preparations. The place looked like a Pinterest dream. Soft pink and gold decorations everywhere, elegant floral arrangements, and a dessert table that belonged in a magazine. About 30 of our closest family and friends were expected to attend, and everything seemed perfect. Tiffany arrived fashionably late, wearing a stunning emerald green dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She swept in with her usual dramatic flair, air-kissing everyone, and making sure to pose for photos with the decorations I had specifically chosen. I watched her subtly position herself in front of the mommy-to-be banner for several selfies, cropping me out of every shot. "Charlotte, darling," she said to me with that fake sweetness she'd perfected. "You look absolutely glowing. Though maybe we should touch up your makeup before more guests arrive? The lighting in here can be so harsh on camera." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as several relatives overheard her comment. This was exactly the kind of passive-aggressive behavior I'd come to expect from Tiffany. But today of all days, I wasn't in the mood for her games. As the afternoon progressed, the pattern continued. When guests brought gifts for the baby, Tiffany would somehow insert herself into the thank you photos. When people asked about my pregnancy journey, she'd interrupt with stories about her own life. When the conversation turned to baby names, she'd loudly announce her opinions about which names were trendy versus classic, as if she were some kind of authority on the subject. But the breaking point came during the gift opening ceremony. I was sitting in the beautifully decorated chair Margaret had set up for me, surrounded by loved ones, opening the thoughtful presents people had brought for my unborn child. Each gift was met with genuine excitement and gratitude from me, which only seemed to irritate Tiffany more. She was standing behind my chair, supposedly helping by collecting the wrapping paper, but I could feel her tension building. When I opened a particularly beautiful handmade baby blanket from my grandmother and everyone oohed and awed over it, I heard Tiffany mutter under her breath, "Some people just eat this attention up, don't they?" I decided to ignore her comment, but Margaret had heard it too. I saw my mother-in-law's eyes narrow dangerously as she looked at her daughter, but she said nothing. Margaret had always been the type to observe before acting, gathering all the facts before making any judgments. After the gift opening, we moved on to the games portion of the shower, We played the typical baby shower games, guessing the baby food flavors, measuring my belly with ribbon, sharing parenting advice. Throughout it all, Tiffany made sure to be the loudest, the most competitive, the one who demanded the most attention. When she didn't win the games, she'd make jokes about how rigged they were, or how some people take these things way too seriously. It was during the final game that Tiffany approached me with what seemed like a peace offering. "Charlotte," she said, pulling me aside with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I want to apologize for being such a diva today. I know this is your special day, and I've been acting like a jealous little sister." I was surprised by her apparent moment of self-awareness. "It's okay, Tiffany. I know big family gatherings can be overwhelming for everyone. Actually," she continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "I have a special surprise for you. I picked out an extra gift, something really personal that I wanted to give you privately. It's upstairs in Mom's walk-in closet. Would you mind coming up with me to see it? I promise it'll make up for my behavior today." Something about her tone felt off, but I was 7 months pregnant, emotionally exhausted from the day's events, and genuinely hoping that maybe Tiffany was finally ready to bury the hatchet between us. Against my better judgment, I agreed to follow her upstairs. Margaret's master bedroom was on the second floor, a spacious room with antique furniture and family photos covering every surface. The walk-in closet was enormous, big enough to be a small bedroom itself, with built-in shelves, hanging rods, and a central island for accessories. It was where Margaret kept her extensive collection of vintage dresses and family heirlooms. "It's in the back corner," Tiffany said, gesturing toward the far end of the closet. "Behind those garment bags." I wrapped it in tissue paper so it wouldn't get dusty. I waddled into the closet, my pregnant belly making it difficult to navigate between the hanging clothes. The closet was deeper than I remembered, and as I made my way toward the back, I heard the unmistakable sound of the door closing behind me. "Tiffany?" I called out, turning around. The door just closed. There was no response. I made my way back to the door and tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. The door was locked from the outside. "Tiffany," I called out louder, starting to panic. "The door is stuck. Can you help me?" Still no response. I could hear the faint sound of music and laughter from downstairs, the party continuing without me. I banged on the door with my fists, calling for help, but the closet was too far from the main party area for anyone to hear me over the celebration. That's when the horrible reality hit me. This wasn't an accident. Tiffany had deliberately locked me in here. I spent the next several minutes alternating between banging on the door and calling for help, but my voice was getting weaker and my hands were getting sore. The closet was stuffy, with no windows and limited air circulation. Being 7 months pregnant, I was already prone to getting overheated, and the stress of the situation was making everything worse. I tried to stay calm, telling myself that someone would notice I was missing soon. But as the minutes turned into what felt like hours, I started to realize how isolated this closet was. The party was loud, people were distracted, and Tiffany had probably told everyone that I was resting or had gone home early. My breathing started to become labored. The baby was moving restlessly in my belly, responding to my elevated stress levels. I could feel my heart racing, and beads of sweat were forming on my forehead despite the coolness of the house. The air in the closet felt thinner, and I was beginning to feel dizzy. I tried to conserve my energy, sitting down on the carpeted floor and leaning against the wall. But every few minutes, I'd gather my strength and bang on the door again, hoping against hope that someone would hear me. My voice was becoming hoarse from calling out, and my hands were bruised from hitting the wooden door. The worst part was thinking about my baby. What if the stress and lack of oxygen were hurting my child? What if something happened to us both because of Tiffany's jealous rage? The thoughts spiraling through my mind were almost as suffocating as the physical environment. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. I had no way of knowing how long I'd been trapped, but it felt like forever. My vision was starting to blur, and I was having trouble staying conscious. The last thing I remembered was feeling the baby give a particularly strong kick, as if trying to wake me up, before everything went black. I woke up to the sound of urgent voices and the blinding brightness of hospital lights. There were tubes in my nose, monitors beeping around me, and my husband David was holding my hand with tears streaming down his face. "Charlotte, thank God," he whispered when he saw my eyes open. "We thought we'd lost you." "The baby," I croaked, my throat feeling like sandpaper. Is the baby okay?" "The baby's fine," came a firm voice from the other side of the bed. It was Margaret, looking more serious than I'd ever seen her. "But you were severely dehydrated and suffering from heat exhaustion. The doctor said if we'd found you even 30 minutes later, the outcome could have been very different." As the fog in my brain began to clear, the memories came flooding back. "Tiffany," I said, trying to sit up. "She locked me in the closet." David's face went white. "What are you talking about?" I told them everything. How Tiffany had lured me upstairs with the promise of a special gift. How she'd locked me in the closet and left me there. As I spoke, I watched Margaret's expression grow darker and more thunderous. "Where is she?" Margaret asked David in a voice that could have frozen hell itself. "Downstairs in the waiting room with the rest of the family," David replied. "She told everyone that Charlotte had gone home early because she wasn't feeling well. She said you'd confirmed it." Margaret's eyes flashed with a fury I'd never seen before. "I confirmed no such thing. In fact, I was the one who organized the search when we couldn't find Charlotte anywhere. It was my idea to check every room in the house. The pieces were falling into place. Tiffany had not only locked me in the closet but had also lied to cover her tracks, potentially delaying my rescue even further." "I want to talk to her," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. "I want to hear her explain what she did." Margaret nodded grimly. "Oh, she'll explain all right. But first, let me go get her. And Charlotte, dear, I want you to know that what happened to you in my house, under my watch, is unforgivable. I take full responsibility for not seeing this coming, and I promise you that justice will be served." 20 minutes later, Tiffany walked into my hospital room with an Oscar-worthy performance of concern and confusion. Her makeup was perfect, her hair was still styled flawlessly, and she was carrying a bouquet of flowers that she'd obviously just purchased from the hospital gift shop. "Charlotte, sweetheart," she gushed, rushing to my bedside. "I've been so worried about you. When you disappeared from the party, we all thought maybe you'd just gotten tired and gone home. Thank goodness David thought to check with you. How are you feeling?" I stared at her in disbelief. She was actually going to pretend that nothing had happened. "Tiffany," I said quietly, "I want you to tell everyone in this room exactly what happened upstairs in your mother's closet." Her face flickered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "I have no idea what you mean, honey. You must be confused from being sick. Maybe the pregnancy hormones are affecting your memory?" That was the wrong thing to say in front of Margaret. "Tiffany Marie Reynolds," Margaret said in a voice that could have shattered glass, "do not insult our intelligence. Charlotte has told us exactly what you did, and frankly, your story about her going home never made sense to begin with. Charlotte's purse was still in my house. Her car was still in my driveway. Her husband hadn't heard from her, yet somehow, according to you, she had simply vanished into thin air." Tiffany's composure started to crack. "Mom, you can't seriously believe that I would hurt Charlotte. Why would I do something like that?" "Because you're jealous," I said, finding my voice. "Because you can't stand that someone else is getting attention. Because you're so self-centered that you were willing to risk my life and my baby's life just to ruin my special day." "That's ridiculous," Tiffany protested, but her voice was getting higher and more defensive. "I would never." "The closet door doesn't lock by itself, Tiffany," Margaret interrupted. "And I've already called the house to have Mrs. Henderson check the security cameras. The cameras that show you leading Charlotte upstairs, and then coming back down alone, and then telling everyone that Charlotte had left." The color drained from Tiffany's face. She'd forgotten about the security system that Margaret had installed after a break in the previous year. She started, then stopped. "It wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean for it to go that far." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. David stood up so fast his chair fell over. "You didn't mean for what to go that far?" he demanded. "You locked my pregnant wife in a closet." "I just wanted her to miss the rest of the party," Tiffany finally exploded, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. "I was sick of everyone fawning all over her like she's some kind of saint just because she's pregnant. She's not the first woman to have a baby, but everyone acts like she's performing some kind of miracle. I'm tired of being invisible in my own family." The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of my heart monitor, which was definitely beating faster now. "So you decided to lock me in a closet where I could have died?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought someone would find you quickly," she said. But even she seemed to realize how weak that sounded. "I thought maybe you'd miss an hour of the party and learn that you're not the center of the universe." An hour? Margaret's voice was deadly quiet. Tiffany, Charlotte was in that closet for over 3 hours. 3 hours in a stuffy, airless space while 7 months pregnant. She could have lost the baby. She could have died. Do you understand that? For the first time, Tiffany seemed to grasp the gravity of what she'd done. Her face went pale, and she sank into a chair as if her legs could no longer support her. "I didn't know," she whispered. I didn't think." "No, you didn't think," Margaret agreed. "You acted like a spoiled, jealous child, and you nearly killed your sister-in-law and unborn niece or nephew in the process." The room was quiet for a long moment as the weight of Margaret's words settled over everyone. Then Margaret stood up, her posture rigid with determination. "Tiffany, I want you to listen to me very carefully," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades managing difficult teenagers. "What you did today was not a prank. It was not a moment of poor judgment. It was assault. It was attempted murder. And if Charlotte decides to press charges, I will testify against you myself." Tiffany's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, you can't be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. You are my daughter, and I love you. But what you did is unforgivable. You deliberately put an innocent woman and an unborn child in mortal danger because of your own petty jealousy." Margaret walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot for a moment before continuing. "Here's what's going to happen. You are no longer welcome in my home. You are no longer invited to family gatherings. Your credit cards that I pay for are being canceled. Your car that I bought you is being repossessed. Your apartment that I help you afford is no longer my responsibility." "Mom, please," Tiffany begged, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I'll apologize to Charlotte. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Some things can't be made right, Tiffany. Some lines, once crossed, change everything forever." Margaret turned back to face her daughter. "You're 28 years old. It's time you learn to live with the consequences of your actions." "What about Marcus?" Tiffany asked, referring to her husband. "What am I supposed to tell him?" "You tell him the truth," Margaret replied coldly. "You tell him that you nearly killed your pregnant sister-in-law because you were jealous of the attention she was receiving, and then you let him decide if that's the kind of woman he wants to be married to." David, who had been silent during Margaret's speech, finally spoke up. "Tiffany, I want you to leave, now, and if you ever come near my wife or my child again, I will call the police." Tiffany looked around the room desperately, as if hoping someone would come to her defense. But there was only silence and the steady beeping of medical equipment. "Charlotte," she said, turning to me with pleading eyes, "please. I know I messed up, but we're family. Surely you can find it in your heart to forgive me?" I looked at this woman who had nearly cost me my life and my child's life, who had lied about it, who had tried to cover it up, and who even now seemed more concerned about the consequences to herself than the harm she'd caused. "Tiffany," I said quietly, "forgiveness is something that has to be earned, and right now I need you to leave so I can focus on my health and my baby's health." She stared at me for another moment, then gathered her purse and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back one more time. "I hope someday you'll understand that I never meant for things to go this far," she said. "But they did go that far," Margaret replied. "And that's something you'll have to live with for the rest of your life." After Tiffany left, the room felt lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. Margaret came over to my bedside and took my hand. "Charlotte, I want you to know that I am deeply, profoundly sorry for what my daughter did to you. There is no excuse for her behavior, and I failed in my duty to protect you in my own home." "Margaret," I said, squeezing her hand, "what Tiffany did was her choice. You're not responsible for that." "Perhaps not directly," she replied, "but I should have seen the signs. I should have recognized how deep her jealousy ran. I should have intervened before it reached this point." Over the next few days, as I recovered in the hospital, the ripple effects of Tiffany's actions continued to spread. True to Margaret's word, Tiffany was cut off from all family financial support. Her husband Marcus, when he learned the full truth of what had happened, was horrified. He moved out of their apartment within a week and filed for divorce shortly after. The story spread through our social circle like wildfire. Tiffany's carefully curated social media presence couldn't hide the reality of what she'd done. Her influencer career, built on projecting an image of glamour and success, crumbled as brands distanced themselves from the scandal. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was watching Margaret's relationship with the rest of the family evolve. Her decisive action in dealing with Tiffany had earned her a new level of respect from everyone. She had shown that she valued justice and protection of the innocent over family loyalty when that loyalty was misplaced. 3 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Emma Grace Reynolds. Margaret was one of the first people to hold her granddaughter, tears streaming down her face as she whispered promises to always protect her. Tiffany never met her niece. In the months following the incident, she made several attempts to reach out through mutual friends and distant relatives. But each time, the answer was the same. Some actions have permanent consequences. I never pressed criminal charges against Tiffany, though the doctors confirmed that I could have had a case for assault and endangerment. Instead, I chose to focus on my family and my new life as a mother. But I also made sure that the story of what happened was known throughout our community. Not out of spite, but as a warning to others about the dangerous lengths that jealousy and narcissism can drive people to. Margaret kept her word about cutting Tiffany off completely. Even when other family members occasionally suggested that enough time had passed, or that family should forgive family, Margaret's response was always the same. Some betrayals are unforgivable, and some people are too dangerous to trust again. Looking back now, as I watch my daughter play in the same house where I nearly lost my life, I'm struck by how much that day changed all of us. Margaret evolved from a stern but distant mother-in-law into one of my closest allies and dearest friends. David learned to set boundaries with toxic family members, no matter how closely related they were, and I learned to trust my instincts about people, even when those people are supposed to love and protect me. The baby shower that was meant to celebrate new life instead became a day that showed us all what we were really made of. It revealed Tiffany's true character, but it also revealed Margaret's strength, David's loyalty, and my own resilience. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if things had gone differently that day. What if Margaret hadn't insisted on searching every room? What if the security cameras hadn't been installed? What if I had been weaker or the baby less resilient? But then I look at my daughter, healthy and happy, and at the family that truly loves and protects us, and I realize that dwelling on what-ifs is pointless. What matters is that we survived, that justice was served, and that the people who truly matter stood by us when it counted. Tiffany taught me that not everyone who claims to love you actually has your best interests at heart. But Margaret taught me that sometimes the people you least expect become your fiercest protectors. And in the end, that's a lesson worth nearly dying for. The last I heard, Tiffany was living in a small apartment across town, working at a retail job and trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Her social media accounts, once filled with glamorous photos and thousands of followers, now sit mostly dormant. The consequences of that one afternoon of jealous rage continue to shape her life years later. And that, I've learned, is exactly how justice sometimes works. Not through dramatic courtroom scenes or public punishment, but through the quiet, persistent weight of natural consequences. Some people build their lives on solid foundations of love, respect, and integrity. Others build on jealousy, manipulation, and selfishness. Eventually, we all live in the houses we've built for ourselves.